Okay, says we're live. Let me double check. Boom, pound the retweet. We got Gabriel and Sue on stream. Oh my goodness. Everyone's looking amazing. Okay, cool. Guys, welcome to Wolf Hut 3. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have head of IR at HUT8, Sue Ennis, on the podcast. She's been on the spaces a few times before. We have Gabriel here as well from Wolf. But big shout out to everyone who's pulling up and checking out the stream. If you haven't already, please retweet it. And a big warm welcome to Sue. Sue, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, super jazzed to be here. Also super jazzed to hear you are a HUT shareholder who got in at $11. Nice to have you. Nice to be here and excited to get into it today. Yeah.
Huge. Yes, indeed. Picked up during the bear market dips and big up right now on my HUT8. So I'm stoked as a shareholder. I feel like DR right now, just a little bit of retail, asking a little bit of the people who are working in the industry, just some stuff about what's going on in the industry. We'll talk a little bit about HUT8, a little bit about your experience at HUT8 as well. And I feel like there's just some things we can pull out of here that would be just in general helpful to everyone involved. I'm sure Gabriel will have some questions about the Bitcoin mining world that I won't even have the knowledge to ask yet. But anyways, I feel like this would be a good place to start before we dive more into you. As far as HUT8, as a company, what are the main goals for HUT8, especially for people who are unfamiliar with the company? How do you kind of wrap that up in like a quick elevator pitch version, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So HUT8, we are focused on maximizing value at the intersection of energy and infrastructure. So at the core of our being, we are power and infrastructure operators. We operate a little over 1.3 gigawatt. We've got another 1.5 gigawatts under exclusivity, 5 gigawatts total in our pipeline. But at the end of the day, power and infrastructure and Bitcoin mining is our tool to keep capturing cheap megawatts at scale and then finding the next highest use case for those electrons as technology continues to evolve. We're also one of the OG hodlers in this space. We still have about 9,000 Bitcoin on our balance sheet. So we're incredibly passionate about the asset class, but we use it again more as a tool and as an energy arbitrage facilitator, which again, we can certainly get into. But yeah, that's HUT8 in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's interesting. Makes a lot of sense. Can you take us through like the recent earnings report from Q3 and how the market perceived that? What it looks like going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually beat revenue estimates by a little over $3 million. We beat earnings per share estimates by 29 cents. And this was the first time on our earnings call that we came out and gave the market a little more. We showed a little leg in terms of what we're doing in the AI space. So we're one of the miners who do have a piece of our portfolio that is eligible for AI megawatt conversion, which we can get into that trend. I'm sure your audience knows a ton about it. But we're one of the only guys who haven't been giving any of the street really any detail beyond we've got this gigawatt of pipeline under exclusivity. So earnings last week was the first time that we actually drilled down a little bit and gave a bit more disclosure in terms of what we've been working on. So we disclosed that we've got about 430 megawatts AI that are AI eligible, very close to closing. We're in the process of commercialization discussions, engineering discussions, and it's 3 different sites. 2 are front of the meter, 1 is behind the meter. So we haven't given much more than that, but that's a lot more leg than we've given than any of our competitors over the past couple of months. And so I think that the market reacted pretty positively to that increased level of disclosure there. And one of the reasons why we hadn't given much detail is that Asher, our CEO, is really focused on, not so much I don't want to use the adage like he doesn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I think more what I'm trying to say is that he's really focused on, don't listen to what I say, see what I do. So focused on execution. But then obviously him and I were getting in like fist fights. I was like, you got to tell people something. And so I think that, he was able to meet me halfway there. And so, yeah, we got some disclosure and the market definitely was happy to see it. So yeah, like I said, still 9,000 Bitcoin on our balance sheet. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we love to see the hodl. Recent like breaking news was Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy just announced they bought 51,000 Bitcoin this morning. It's a massive amount. Obviously it's completely different. But I really liked what you said there, which was you're using Bitcoin mining as a way to acquire a ton of energy and then arbitrage that energy and really mark up basically the electrons.
That's right.
And then taking them from miners and then throwing them into AI, basically. Like, so when you're thinking about the talent required and the planning and the infrastructure needed, do you think long term the company will gear more towards AI and will focus more on the potentially higher revenue, or do you think the arbitrage will remain for a long time, where you can go out get cheap energy with Bitcoin and then perform the arbitrage?
Yeah, I think, look, we're in the business of arbitraging electrons. And so not all megawatts make sense for AI. Some megawatts may one day make sense for water desalination, may one day make sense for green hydrogen. If Elon wants to shoot all those rockets into the space, he's going to need a shitload of hydrogen, right? So our thesis isn't pivoting to just AI or staying with Bitcoin. It's that we have this tremendous tool. And we also really believe in the purpose of Bitcoin, i.e. decentralization, open access for all, financial sovereignty. And so, but yeah, we look at it more as a tool. And again, some megawatts may never be eligible for something beyond just Bitcoin mining. And so then that's where those megawatts would make sense to just keep Bitcoin mining there. So it really is our tool that we use to keep building this power and energy portfolio.
Yeah. I might be a little bit presumptive by asking this next question, but like I liked how you said, okay, there's hydrogen, hydrogen's kind of, I guess, down the road. No one's really doing that, but there's hydrogen potentially, there's AI potentially, there's Bitcoin mining potentially. My assumption would be that, depending on the location of the data center and the electricity, that would be a huge factor. Because, for example, with like AI data centers, if you're doing inferencing, it's kind of been word on the street, or like, I guess, word on Bitcoin Twitter, which is that you need to be near the cities to do that. So is that kind of where you guys are considering, depending on geolocation and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So of the megawatts that we disclose, some are tier 1, aka close to cities, some are tier 2, so a little bit further out, but still have that potential conversion opportunity for AI training. And so yeah, but again, it's not about picking a lane. It's at the end of the day, we've got 3 layers of our business. We've got the power layer, we have the infrastructure layer, and then we've got the compute layer where we monetize what that infrastructure is for. And we're pretty compute agnostic, i.e., we've certainly got a GPU as a service line. We've got our Bitcoin mining arm, but that's like the crux of who we are, is power and infrastructure at the end of the day.
Totally, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Cade, what do you think? Shareholder opinion.
Well, I figured we should probably ask this. I completely forgot right after the HUT8 question. Just in terms of your role, Sue, what does that entail typically on a day-to-day basis? And then I'll have to hold back my other question, but I am curious. I have a follow-up question as well. But Sue, please.
Yeah, so I lead IR here at HUT8, and also I work on the government relations side. So it's certainly a lot of speaking with investors, current and future, explaining the story, answering any questions they may have, spreading the story to new investor classes, getting on retail, talking to you guys, getting on social media, talking to the decentralized hedge fund that is the internet. And then a lot of research, a lot of report reading. And then on the government relations side, certainly, mingling and hobnobbing with, regulators who might be working on Bitcoin policy, working with the Texas Blockchain Council, and also some interesting stuff in Canada. So we've got some cool meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, because Alberta, which is like the North Dakota of Canada, ton of energy, traditionally an oil and gas province. The premier there is now signaling that she wants Alberta to be like the data center capital of Canada. We already have a mine there, so we've got relationships, ton of cheap power, deregulated market. So it's definitely spending some time mingling with sort of some of the big heads of policy and heads of corporations that are setting up shop there, like hyperscalers. So obviously spending some time with them as well. But yeah, that's a lot of what I do.
What do you think the biggest assumptions, or what's the word, misassumptions that people are making about the industry? Do they confuse the HPC AI play? Do they get confused? So is mining tied to the AI? Does AI help the miners? Are they separate? What are some misconceptions, I guess, about the industry that you've noticed?
I'm not sure I would say, okay, well, first of all, and we already sort of talked about it, I do think that for people who haven't really done their research, they just think that there's an automatic pivot or sort of auto switch to AI opportunity, and that's absolutely not the case. Like, not all megawatts are AI eligible. Not all megawatts make sense to even try to convert to AI. And so they should stay as Bitcoin mining, or they should stay as potential, like, again, green hydrogen sites, which a lot of the market thinks green hydrogen is BS, but in Singapore and Japan, there are some green hydrogen projects being stood up. And green hydrogen, for anyone who doesn't know, is the process of creating hydrogen from renewable power. And hydrogen is a major fuel that's used in like all industry. So that's super interesting. But yeah, I definitely think there's still that misconception out there about the understanding of, you know, what is actually eligible for AI, because it's not all megawatts. And anyone who tells you that it's possible is out to lunch. I do still sometimes, with like the old school TradFi institutions, hear like Bitcoin's bad for the environment. It's not as loud as it used to be. So I've been in this industry since 2017, beginning of 2017. And then I've been with HUT since December 2020. And like 2021 was savage. It was just like FUD, and quite frankly, misinformation was out there. So still a little bit of that, but that rhetoric is definitely assuaging, which is very good, because Bitcoin miners, really, we are a partner in the transition to renewable power, full stop. Cool. Renewable power needs load balancing. That's what we do best. So
yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so could you had mentioned a term earlier that I wanted to know some clarification on. Like, I'd heard it around, but what's the difference between saying something's in front of the meter versus behind the meter?
Yeah, so it's all dependent on the, like, where the it's the actual location of where a site is. So front of the meter, you usually have grid interconnection access and like a substation, and behind the meter sometimes can include a substation, but you usually have sort of more remote locations that aren't traditionally connected to the grid.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so those could be those more remote locations are most likely Bitcoin mining facilities, or could they also be AI?
Yeah, no, they could absolutely be AI, because then again, if it's the question is like, is there water available? Are they close to populations? So it can certainly, both can cater to AI, but that's just the nuance difference.
Yeah. Can you clear up like this? We have this confusion, and some people say on Spaces, really. So if you have a facility, obviously if it needs to be a AI facility, it needs to be like tier 3, which just means that it's really reliable and that it can always make up the demand for whatever's being asked of it. But then you have like other data centers like Bitcoin miners. Are those data centers like physically separate, or are they in the same location sometimes?
They certainly can be in the same location. And I think one of the things that we are thinking about, so yes, our core sort of mission, the fundamentals of our business are that we are power and infrastructure. But as we look at continuing to grow this business and where this business is going, at the end of the day, we don't really want to be like a General Electric. Yes, that's nice. They trade at okay multiples, but like, our team and our team's focus is really focused on value engineering. So how can we more so be like the Tesla of infrastructure and power versus sort of the GE, the steady Eddie flip to that type of model? So where am I going with this? Yes, in the traditional AI space, customers are looking for 5.9 reliability, N+1 redundancy. But we do think there's a potential world in terms of where data centers are going, where hyperscalers or an enterprise that does not have customer-facing compute, but does need the AI training for their own internal operations, where they may not need that full 10 million per megawatt 5.9 reliability and redundancy built out. And so we see a world where there's potentially almost like a tier 2.5 data center, where perhaps there's not the same amount of redundancy, but again, you still have the cooling, the fiber, the connectivity that's required for an AI data center, for an AI training data center. And that's something that we're starting to sort of explore with this new site that we're standing up in West Texas. It's called Vega. It's a partnership with Bitmain. It's 205 megawatts. And the initial commercialization strategy for those 205 megawatts is a hosting contract with Bitmain. It's 135 million bucks annualized. It's an 18-month contract. And the reason why so that site is AI eligible. It does have the water and the fiber, etc. But the reason why we initially decided to stand up Bitcoin mining infrastructure there is, number one, we had a contractual obligation to start pulling power within 6 months. And that's like, you cannot stand up a data center in 6 months in the AI space. It's just not possible. Because you have to stand up the data center and sign the hyperscaler deal, et cetera. So it was immediate commercialization strategy. And number two, what we built and innovated with Bitmain was effectively we redesigned the form factor that miners sit in. So usually miners sit in this like shoebox formation, and then there's like chicken coop wire around it, whatever. And so we actually innovated for these miners to sit in more of a U form factor, so that you see in traditional data centers. But the most exciting part is this infrastructure is going to cool up to 200 kilowatts per rack. Why does that matter? Is the future of chips, whether it be AI chips, ASIC miners. Cooling is the future. Direct liquid to chip cooling cools something like 3,000 times more efficiently than air does. And so for us to be able to stand up this infrastructure that could potentially cool the chips that AI training data centers would need, to be able to go to hyperscalers and digital and data center operators and say, hey, look, we understand actually where the whole cooling needs of this are going. And also be able to build a center at Vega with modularity in mind. So we're building for 400,000 per megawatt. Again, not saying that AI is eligible there now, but the way that we're building and with this direct liquid to chip cooling, there is the opportunity to continue to add on redundancy features later if it's required. So if the Bitmain contract is up in 18 months, we decide we don't want to self-mine there, and it does make sense to co-locate an AI data center, training data center, et cetera. It's that modularity and sort of like Lego formation that would potentially facilitate that flip. And so that's what I'm saying in terms of what we're focused on is, again, we really do want to be like the Tesla of power and infrastructure. Data centers traditionally, and then I'll get off my soapbox here. Last point, data centers traditionally, they haven't innovated in like 30 to 40 years. And this is why they're all in such a huge, in like a conundrum, because you've now got the NVIDIA Blackwells coming out. They have heat. They need to be cool. They have heat requirements up to like, I think it's 120 kilowatts. And these traditional data center infrastructures are like, shit, I don't have the infrastructure to cool that, or I'm going to have to disrupt my existing clients in order to implement that cooling. And then I have to manage two systems. And there's a lot of risks with that. So point is, that's my long TED talk about how we're thinking about the future, how we're trying to build for where the future is going, but then obviously still lock in that sexy floor and the optionality to potentially convert to Bitcoin mining too. But that's how Asher thinks and how the team thinks about like innovation in this space.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It seems like the cooling is what's going to go forward, is going to be the most sustainable from just a physical standpoint for these pieces of equipment. Totally. Yeah, really cool.
Love it. Love it. You just dropped some heat there, Sue. You also mentioned that you begun working at HUT. You said in 2020. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell us. I would love to hear a little bit about the origin story, how you fell into this industry, and then how you got the HUT8 role.
Yeah. So I was like dead inside in finance until 2016, and like part of the thing that was making me so like literally dead inside, like Googling like 9 a.m. in the morning, like signs you hate your job. Like I was like, is it normal to feel this tired and like deeply unhappy at 9 a.m. every morning, like every Monday morning? Anyhow.
Oh man.
So where I was like seeing, look, I worked as an asset manager. It was great. Lots of good experience, selling structured product to family offices and small institutions. But one of the things I was seeing was like some of like the prehistoric processes that were basically running the financial services space in Canada. And I was like, this is insane. All these different silos of people talking to each other via like faxes and shit. And this is like 2016, like super antiquated processes were still happening there. Anyways, that's how I learned about Bitcoin. That's how I learned about blockchain. I'm from Canada and was in Toronto. And there was actually like Ethereum. There's a huge OG Ethereum community here. So like Anthony Giorio, one of the co-founders, is from Toronto. Vitalik was originally from Toronto. So there was this like really tight, small community that was talking about crypto. And again, I started to learn about it and I desperately wanted to get in, but they were like, no, you're just another finance D-bag trying to, hop on the bandwagon. Anyway, so I finally swindled my way in and helped start this crypto exchange called CoinSquare, the wealth trading arm. But my like aha orange pill moment was I did this jungle survival course in Amazon Guyana in the spring of 2017. And it was like me and like 4 other people learning how to survive in the jungle. And it was like hell on earth. It was the worst. I mean, I would never do it again. So many ways for like dumbasses like me to die in the jungle. Anyhow, but we had this tribe that lived in the jungle in Amazon Guyana, following us around, because again, there's a lot of ways to like you can step on a bullet ant nest, or like, you know, get eaten by a jaguar or whatever. So they were following us around, making sure none of us like dumbasses like killed ourselves. And what was really interesting is half of them didn't know their birthday, had no identification.
Wow.
And then at the end of the trip, and that was just how it was. They were like, you know, we were just born in the jungle, and I've never, you know, really needed an identification. Anyways, at the end of the trip, the leader of the group asked to be paid in Bitcoin because they all had cell phones.
Whoa.
And that was like, look, that's when my brain exploded. And I actually saw firsthand the applicability of this technology with people who would never normally be able to participate in the traditional economy, right? If you don't have an ID, you can't get a bank account. Anyway, so that was my big like orange pill moment. And yeah, I've been in there ever since. Although I was saying I was like definitely emotionally hungover from the first crypto bear market. And so I was trying to get out in the fall of 2020, like go join MasterCard in their digital identity blockchain division. But then I had 2 different people be like, yo, I think you need to look at this company, HUT8. It was trading at like 40 cents. And I was like, nope, pass.
Wow.
But then I started to like learn a bit more about the mining side. And I was like, all right, let's do this.
That's crazy. Wow. So you, Guyana, you went all the way there to learn about Bitcoin, basically.
That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Wait, so
that's probably one of the most badass origin stories I've heard.
Yeah, that's wild. That's
I have videos of me like eating bugs and stuff, but like just to be clear, I wasn't, you know how people come back from a trip like that, they're like, oh my God, I found myself. I was like, fuck this. I'm a consumer. I like showering. I like nice things. I literally bought a purse, like a fancy purse on the way home from the airport, and like got a manicure because I was like, no. But anyways, but yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
Wow.
I had I had a stint where I was living in a car, and I was living for about 6 months, living in the car, doing some travel photography, videography life. And I missed just bath towels and like being able to stretch out, just these smallest little things. Wow, that is a crazy story. Gabriel, I was gonna, I saw you started to say something.
Well, okay, yeah, I was just wondering, what about that experience or your experiences professionally or being in Toronto where there was Ethereum? What about all that crypto stuff? You said MasterCard, which I would consider is crypto. What orange pilled you? What brought you to Bitcoin and some of the other ones?
So it was a combination, like I said, of like being dead inside in finance and then learning about some of the solutions for the financial services space, obviously that blockchain, DLT, and then naturally that led to learning about Bitcoin. But like I said, it was that orange pill moment where I saw it being used in real time with someone who literally did not have the access or ability to participate in the formal financial services economy. And at that time, something like 1.8 billion people who didn't have identity. So I was like, holy shit, this is a technology that literally can directly serve those 1.8 billion people who aren't allowed to play in the formal economy. So that was a big thing.
The accessibility part. Okay.
Yeah, the accessibility part for sure.
Wow. Gotcha. And their Bitcoin is just up probably a good bit now, right? So they're definitely happy with that payment. So congratulations to you for helping them out as well. I'm sure they're stoked. Wow, what a crazy story. So yeah, and I did not know about that it had happened that way, and then you were interested in other positions in the Web3 world as well. What was the question? It was something to do. So I'm just going to start talking and hopefully it comes back to me by the time I finish the sentence. But this is like literally my life on Spaces. I'll just start saying something. I'm like, what am I about to say? So you mentioned a few times that the role would make you feel dead inside. I definitely can relate there. A few times in my career that I almost walked away just because I got a little bit, I think it just didn't, different parts of the year I was feeling different things, but it seemed like it was pretty intense for you at that period of time. Was it, you mentioned, was it a bear market? I mean, you said it was in 2020, you got to the HUT8 position. So, pretty soon after that, we had a pretty raging market.
Yeah.
But what was it that was super, super miserable for you that kind of got you to a point where you were like, this is not the move?
So I started in crypto, like I said, at the beginning of 2017, like end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And so I was there for that first initial bull run up, right? in 2018. But back then, there were still no real conversations around regulation or parameters so that businesses could build in this space. So once that first bear market happened of like 2019, it was rough. Like no one would take your call. All of the projects, remember ICOs, like all of the ICOs had lost their funding because a lot of people were like idiots with how they spent their funding. But and so it was just like, it was a real slog, but I was still very much interested and believed in the technology, but there was just no funding in the space at all. And then things started to turn around when COVID happened in 2020. And then, so.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy turnaround there. You could pretty much sneeze inside of a board meeting and get a little bit of funding, I think, as long as you sneeze toward the direction that they wanted to lean toward. That's pretty interesting. I am curious too, through the years you've had to communicate in different types of environments, different kind of markets. Curious on what is hard to communicate or the hardest things to communicate when speaking in different settings. Sometimes you're in front of a board of investors, sometimes you're in front of retail investors, sometimes you're in front of potential partners. So does that pitch change at all? How has it changed some of the things that are hard to communicate? Would you love for you to give some color there?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say it changes that much. Look, I'm really lucky. The HUT board is like strong as hell. They are at 12 out of 10. A lot of energy executives, so like Constellation, Exelon, guys who've probably never owned a Bitcoin in their life, but they understand the energy arbitrage play and are super supportive and like proper Gs. And then Bill Tai. Bill Tai is like the founder of Zoom, Canva. He's had like 23 IPOs. He's brilliant. He started like one of the art cars at I think he started Robot Heart art car in Burning Man. He's so fucking cool. So we've got a really strong, super cool board who like gets it, even if they don't get it. Do you know what I mean? Like they get it. Mm-hmm. So I don't really find the pitch changes there when I'm presenting data to them at all. I will say with this new institutional audience who's here because they think Bitcoin miners that are pivoting to AI are like data center REITs trading at a crazy discount. Those conversations are definitely different because they're changing a little bit now, but that investor base started coming to the market in like May, June, when the whole there's not enough power to fuel AI, and then CoreWeave and Core Scientific signed their deal. So now this huge class, like herd of institutions came in, and they don't give a shit about Bitcoin mining. Like some of them are starting to now, but initially they were like, candidly, like guys who ran billions of dollars were like, I don't give a shit about your I don't even know what the fuck a hash rate is. Don't even try and tell me because I don't care. I think it's garbage. Yeah. Like, but so that definitely changed the pitch because obviously 70% of our revenues are Bitcoin. And when the investor is telling you, I don't give a fuck about Bitcoin, I don't even want to hear about it. Like that changes the pitch a little bit. But I will say a lot of those guys are now coming around and being like, well, wait a minute. This is a real business. These are pretty substantial margins. Like, this is a cash flowing business HUT has while they continue to pursue commercializing other megawatts. Like, so I would say that was probably the most unique sort of pivot in the pitch when those guys came down the pipeline.
Yeah. Real quick, if I understand correctly, I didn't know this before, but are some of the board members at HUT8, are they from Constellation Energy?
Yeah. So Mayo Shattuck used to run Constellation. He was chairman of the board. Stan O'Neill was with Exelon. Again, Bill Tai's had 23 exits. I think some of them have been in the energy space or like energy adjacent space. Rick Rickardson's like one of the most powerful private equity guys, but he's also actually a movie producer and produced the King Richard movie with Will Smith. So he's on the board of MicroStrategy. Rick is also on the board of MicroStrategy and has been best friends with Saylor for like 20 years. So it's and then there's this chick, Amy, who wrote this book called The Creator's Code. And she basically interviewed Elon, like name any famous CEO now. She was interviewing them as to like what their secret sauce was back in the day. She's a professor at Stanford. So it's a really diverse board that's able to get us into rooms that we normally, like most people can't get into. So.
Yeah. Constellation is interesting to me because I used to study at a college, nuclear engineering.
Oh, cool.
They were the biggest recruiter.
Yeah.
And so I was back there when it actually just split into Exelon and Constellation.
Oh,
wow. And so I think that the company is really interesting because they sort of are the biggest mainstay in the nuclear space. So with that, like, do you think, is there sort of that talk in the boardroom, I guess you could say, like, Are people looking at like this next wave of nuclear, or is that something you guys are potentially well positioned to take advantage of?
Oh, big time.
Especially with the other deals and such.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're very interested in the SMR space, small modular reactors. However, and also our CFO. So our CFO comes from Citibank, and he was a managing director who closed over 80 billion of deals in the power and energy space. So small modular reactors are super interesting. I do think, though, as much as I hate to say it, we do agree with like the CEO of Constellation and with a lot of sort of some of the buy side analysts on the space who are saying that like this technology is awesome. It solves a lot of problems, but we're still like 10 years out from it actually being economical and scalable. And even like the permitting process, there's like one company who has a permit to actually build the SMRs. I think the company is called NuScale, I think. NuScale. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. But otherwise, other than them, they're like the permitting process, even to get your designs approved, is like 5 to 7 years. And then we have to also think about the fact that like the US or North America in general doesn't really have a stable uranium supply chain because we gave a lot of it to the Middle East or to Russia, or we're reliant on Russia. And so there's a lot of different factors that I think need to be solved before SMRs become viable. But are they the absolute like game-changing technology that we believe in? 100%. And we would play in that all day long if we could.
Yeah, interesting. It's great to hear your perspective on that, just because, you know, I've done some research on that. So NuScale SMR is a company I think I've been a shareholder in that for like several years now.
Amazing.
Yeah,
cool.
Because I knew that they got permitted by the NRC and all these other things, but totally, like, even Macro Minutes, who we have on, shout out, I guess, if he's listening to this, but we have him on the Minor Spaces. He works on big nuclear reactors, but his opinions are also like, we don't really know how far along we are on the SMR game, but China has like hundreds of these things rolling at the moment. So
totally. Well, I think I was reading China on the SMR side. I thought they only had like 2. They have a ton of nuclear power plants, but I think they've got 2 SMRs, and then Russia has one in like super, super remote, freezing cold. I can't remember the name of the place in Russia, but yeah, we're behind. We're definitely behind. And we need to solve a lot of things from like a policy perspective, and basically the guys who are in charge of permitting like need to beef up their expedition process for that stuff.
Totally.
And we got to solve for uranium. But yeah, no, the technology is awesome, and we would absolutely play in that if we could.
Definitely. Kate, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I've got a few for sure. Well, this one just pops in my head when you brought up policy. So got a presidential change here coming up pretty soon. It seems to be that not the entirety of Web3 and Bitcoin world, but it seems that a good majority of them are relatively happy, or at least neutral on what that might do for the Bitcoin and crypto world. How are you feeling on a personal level towards the next few years, especially if we start to see some easing on some of the policy and some of the restrictions and regulations, start to see some stuff coming through?
So I can't talk about politics too much because my legal team will start breathing into a paper bag and like get extreme heartburn. However, I can say that obviously this administration is, we're happy to see a more welcome to crypto administration. I think it will be interesting, though, to see what happens with these tariffs, right? If 60% tariffs do actually end up going through, that could, I was reading some stuff, I think it was Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan who both called for that could be like a 1.4% drag on US GDP. It could also increase prices. If we increase prices, we could see interest rates go back up, which wouldn't be great for Bitcoin because when interest rates go back down, usually Bitcoin rallies. Like when we had the first interest rate down, Bitcoin rallied 6% like the next day. So yeah, hopefully we don't see those crazy tariffs. It would also excuse my French. It would also like screw with the battery storage industry, which imports like 80% of their materials from China. The renewables industry, most of the solar panels come from China. So that piece, like, I think is worth watching because there could be some negative repercussions there. But otherwise, of course, man, like Trump has signaled that he's super pro crypto. Getting rid of Gary would be awesome. And
Yeah. No, I was just curious, and I appreciate you putting your job on the line for the sake of this podcast. So I'm curious. So You don't get to your position by dancing through life and not working hard. But you're also super fun. I think most people, when they, if they were to jump on a podcast with someone who works at a big Bitcoin mining company, they'd have no idea what to expect. But you're super fun, and I feel like you probably work super hard. You've been through a bunch of things in your life, but I'm curious, from your teens and 20s, has anything changed? Like attitude, mindset towards getting into your career, I guess is more what I'm asking. Like before you got into some of these bigger roles, what was kind of your attitude, mindset towards life and career?
Like super candidly, I don't know. I think like I was always a little bit bored. I mean, look, my parents were big in finance. And so it was like, you get into finance. That's what you do. And then once I was there, I was like, nah, this is pretty boring. I will say that like, since getting into crypto, I don't ever really feel like I've like worked a day in my life. And I've had some rough fucking days. Like HUT had a crazy short report come out on us last year, which I'm not allowed to talk about, but I will say that was a crazy, like there have been rough times in this industry, but like, when you're constantly learning and you're actually working in an industry that you believe in the technology. I'm not just like shilling HUT's bag. Like I genuinely believe in this technology. It's fun. Like, so I guess that's one thing I've learned is that like work doesn't actually ever have to feel like work. Like it actually can be fun when you're actually interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's huge.
Battles to fight, and it's not boring. Or like,
I'm never bored. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys feel the same.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're bored, you probably are behind on something you're supposed to be doing.
Totally.
Usually on my mindset, I'm like, okay, it's been like 30 minutes. I haven't like looked at anything. I'm like, am I behind on something? Is there something I was supposed to do? Like, was that thing due like a day ago? Like, that's pretty funny. Okay, well, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, like when I was in my teens, let's say I was probably pretty anxious to just get into the game. I think that was probably most of my mind. I was just anxious to get into the game. I've been watching the sidelines. It felt like for too long. I was ready to get out of school pretty early on and I guess test myself and see what could happen. I think the internet sort of opened my mind to what's possible, seeing these people on the internet just land ridiculous gigs. I never really had sights to be the KOL influencer type of person. And I feel like I've been able to avoid that while still being in the media world relatively. And I just didn't really have that much interest in that side of the world. But I did like that you could jump into this Web3 world. Kind of when I was just looking in through like the glass, I was like, okay, I can get into this world, but I'm not really a trader. I'm not really one of these degen shitcoiner people. But I think if I make educational content, some podcasts and things like that, eventually in 2 or 3 years, I can start to interview cool people that I couldn't have had access to before. And that literally has played out exactly how it is. If you commit to the game and start putting in work, you do meet some pretty cool people. I'm curious, you've been all around the world, I assume, and you've been in lots and lots of rooms. Can you talk me through a time where you walked into a room and you were like, oh, wow, I'm here right now. That's that person. That's that lady who started that company, or that's that man. I'm curious if you have any stories that come to mind.
So I will say there's like a direct correlation between celebrities and Bitcoin price appreciation. So like celebrities who want to like get into the space and Bitcoin price appreciation, like now we see Scottie Pippin's like tweeting about Bitcoin, but like
he was in our spaces for a while trying to pump his coin.
Okay, well, he's hit my feed now, and I'm like, okay, this is a bull market. The bull market's back. That's a signal for me. Yeah, no, like I definitely, like I spent like a weekend talking business with like probably one of the most famous rap stars in the world. I'm not allowed to say, but he's not in jail. I can tell you that much.
Oh,
for baby oil antics. It's not that guy. But like this is a couple years ago. He wanted to start his own bank, and so like there was definitely some times from there that I was like, whoa, I'm chilling with this person. Like FaceTiming with like Mark Wahlberg, who wanted to do something.
Whoa, all right.
I have to, and like definitely I was in rooms with Sam Bankman-Fried, Tom Brady back in 2021. But and this is going to sound like I'm just kissing ass right now, but I'm genuinely not. I will say sometimes I sit with HUT's board and I'm like, ooh, I can't believe I'm at this table. Cause like Amy, who is our board member who wrote the book, The Creator's Code, highly recommend it. Like she's done some pretty cool stuff. Again, like Bill Ties had 23 exits. Like they're like our board's pretty impressive and definitely like, yeah, I definitely have moments where I'm sitting with them and I'm like, ooh, but also it's good to be the dumbest person in the room. Do you know what I mean? Like you're hanging out with the wrong person if you're not like, I like being one of the dumber people in the room because I think that, there's always things you can learn from other people. And if you're the smartest person in the room, in my opinion, you're hanging out with the wrong people. So, yeah, I'd say definitely with our board, but yeah, last bull market, there was like crazy celebrities everywhere that we were hanging with.
Very cool.
No, it's crazy when you get into this. I guess even in our industry, I've been around pretty cool people too. But as we have a few more minutes here, I did kind of want to get to one quick topic, sort of back in the investment side of things, but also just kind of like generally macro going forward. So like I host the Bitcoin Spaces. I love talking macro, where we think Bitcoin's going or all this or that. It's my assertion that we'll be at like $1 million Bitcoin in 5 to 7 years, probably. If you just kind of look at things, if you go by Saylor's projection by 2045, he's projecting $13 million Bitcoin. If you guys look at your HODL, I think it's close to 10,000 Bitcoin. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a little over 9,100 Bitcoin.
Okay. Yeah, that would put you guys right now. I mean, obviously, as the government continues for the next 20 years, they're going to print a lot more money. But if things were to remain the same and your HODL was priced at 13 million, you would be in the top 25 companies with a balance sheet in terms of evaluating them by balance sheet size. Just going by another graphic I saw of Michael Saylor and what they're doing. So do you guys see Bitcoin as that apex asset? You personally, or the company, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll speak for me personally, because again, legal would not love it if I gave any outlook on behalf of HUT8. But look, we're hodling, like we definitely believe in the asset class. Me personally, so VanEck came out with this report a little while ago talking about how by 2050 Bitcoin could be 2.3 million per coin, and the thesis behind that was if Bitcoin were to capture a percentage of reserves in global banks and take some of the US dollar's place in global and domestic trade. And I do think that is possible if the US continues to just print like crazy, take on more debt. It's the appetite for the US dollar to trade, I think, will definitely continue to assuage, which was part of VanEck's thesis. And that's where alternative currencies that perhaps are borderless and and country agnostic like Bitcoin could steal some of that market cap, which in turn again would create a pretty significant price appreciation for Bitcoin. So I actually do believe in that thesis of Bitcoin capturing more of that global trade bank reserve status.
Okay,
good to know. Interesting.
Amazing. We've got like a minute or two left. Just a quick question here to wrap up. So do you have any practical advice that might be helpful to someone, not like the work hard, meet people, shake hands kind of thing, but any practical things that come to mind from the roles you've worked at or just being in the industry at all that come to mind?
I think like keep reading, like stay curious, like keep reading, stay on top of your shit. And just, I would just say keep reading, keep researching, like always stay curious because this industry is constantly changing. And the second you think you know something, another variable comes down. And so staying curious definitely is a huge advantage. And also make friends on the internet, man. Like social media, it is the new decentralized hedge fund. This is where the investors are. Retail and institutions, like the head of VanEck Research, Matt Siegel, is tweeting all day long. Like that guy is, trad by institutional. So stay on social media, make friends there, and obviously stay curious is what I would say to everyone.
Amazing. Was there anyone you wanted to shout out before we wrap?
No, you know what? Just my HUT8 team, and also the investors. Thank you to the HUT8 investors who have stayed with us. It has been it is really hard, but we are deeply grateful for all the shareholders who have stuck with us, and we're here for you guys. And hodl the HUT.
I love it. Gabriel, any last thoughts, bro?
No, I really appreciate your time, Sue. This was a great 45-minute segment. Learned a bunch, and I'll definitely be taking a closer look at HUT8. Maybe we'll talk about it more on Spaces. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you later. Be sure to give Sue a follow and have an amazing rest of your day. We have Space every single day here at Wolf Hut 3, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.
Bye, guys.
And we're off.